Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to Just Society, and this is Sammil. A few days ago, some 7 or 8 days ago, I happened to watch an interview in BBC where the anchor asks the Palestine representative to condemn Hamas for its attack on Israel. The Palestine representative, or the ambassador of Palestine to UK, I think, he responded by saying that this is not the right question. This is not an accurate question. Let me come to the point in a moment's time, but the purpose for me to tell this is how the mainstream media are very hasty in inviting the representatives or ambassadors of Palestine and start by asking them to condemn themselves while they happen to be the occupied, while the Israeli Zionist forces are the occupiers. Here, the Palestine representative responded by saying that this is not the right question. You cannot draw any symmetry between the occupier and the occupied. Hamas is just a resistance movement. It's not the Palestine government, but Israel is giving orders and commands to its organized military to carry out war crimes, to deliberately and consciously target innocent men, women and children. So you cannot draw any symmetry here. This is not about condemning or not condemning. This is not a blame game. If our conversation has to serve justice, then he's asking, the Palestine representative is asking the anchor, you must ask yourself, how many times have you interviewed the Israeli officials? And how many times throughout these 80 years, 90 years, the government of Israel has committed war crimes in that geographical part of the world called Gaza. And you know very well, your own camera, your own TV channel has broadcasted a bombarding of civilian infrastructures, death of innocent children, innocent women in their thousands. And how many times have you invited Israeli officials and started by asking them to condemn themselves? This is the hypocrisy and double standard. Now, the purpose for me to say this is, now recently, 2 days back, we have seen the Israeli Air Force deliberately, consciously and intentionally targeting a hospital in Gaza, which lead to the massacre, cold-blooded murder of more than 800 children. It's very, very obvious and clear through authentic and reliable sources. So now, have any one of you seen the very TV channels like CNN and BBC inviting the Israeli officials who are directly or indirectly responsible for this deliberate targeting of innocent civilians and start by asking them to condemn themselves? Have anyone seen this since that attack in Gaza and that hospital where hundreds of innocent civilians has also taken refuge? They have not, went there for treatment, but they were inside that hospital as a virtual refugees seeking asylum and shelter because their houses were bombarded and bulldozed, razed to the ground, and they have nowhere to go. So therefore, they are inside that hospital seeking refuge and shelter. So these war planes, knowing fully well that this is a hospital, they deliberately targeted that hospital and blew it up, killing more than 500 plus innocent children. So now, where are these channels? Where are these countries to begin with, who speak a great deal about human rights, democracy, justice, values, human values? Where are these channels, the famous mainstream media mouthpieces? I have not seen these channels since that bombardment. They haven't invited a single Israeli officials and started by asking them to condemn themselves for this attack. So every time the Palestinians or any other oppressed people of the world, they are always expected to condemn themselves if they retaliate. This is not about occupation. This is not about invasion. This is not about aggression and tyranny. This is a self-defense warfare. This is a resistance. So whenever they resist and whenever they indulge in a self-defense warfare, they are expected and asked to condemn themselves, and they are hastily invited by these Western puppet medias, and in front of the camera, they are always pressurized to condemn themselves. What Israel has went through one day, that excruciating torment, the painful experience, the Palestinians, the people of Palestine, the indigenous people of Palestine has been undergoing for the past 70, 80, 90 years. So there is no any symmetry, there is no any parallel whatsoever. You cannot equate the occupier and the occupied. You cannot keep the Israeli occupation forces on par with the resistance movements who are fighting for their dignity, freedom, liberation of their own indigenous lands and for their self-determination. You cannot equate. So this is the media hypocrisy right now we are seeing in front of our own eyes, And you people, some of you might have seen the German minister, one of German ministers' video going viral, in which she is categorically saying that deliberate targeting of civilian infrastructures is terrorism, and we cannot use any other word to describe such gory incident. We cannot define this otherwise. So if deliberate and conscious targeting, intentional targeting of civilian infrastructure amounts to an act of terror, it's terrorism, then what's your opinion about Israel's 7, 8, 9 days of relentless targeting of civilian infrastructures, conscious and deliberate targeting of innocent men, women and children? You haven't come out up until now and spoken any words about this deliberate and conscious targeting of civilian infrastructures. In the issue of Ukraine war, Ukraine-Russia war, you have stated your position categorically, whereas in Israel's bombarding of civilian infrastructures in Palestine, in Gaza, you haven't come out and spoken any words regarding this. So this is a drop in a teacup. This leader is one example of all other so-called democratic leaders who are always roaming around the world that they are the champions of human rights, they are the champions of democracy, they are always there to uphold the international law, the provisions of the international law, they are always abiding by the law, they are law-abiding people, on and on and on. But when it comes to Israel's insensitive, gory, gruesome killing of innocent people of Palestine, innocent civilians of Gaza, they are maintaining the deafening, some of them are maintaining deafening silence, and others are coming out and shamefully giving their unconditional support to the barbaric, terrorizing, fascist, racist regime of Israel. Israel, let's be very clear, Israel is a settler colonial entity built on the foundations of apartheid, racism and Zionism. Zionism is mere 150 years old, whereas Judaism, we are not speaking about Judaism. All Jews, all Zionists are Jews, but all Jews are not Zionists. Judaism is 3,000 years old, whereas Zionism is a mere 150 years old. And this state of Israel, this settler colonial entity called Israel, have been built on the foundations of Zionism. And we cannot forget the Nakba tragedy. We cannot forget the Shabra and Shatila mass murders. We cannot forget the first Intifada, the second Intifada. We cannot forget, up until now, more than 33,000 Palestinian children have been killed by the Israeli militant occupying force, and more than 100,000 plus innocent men and women have been killed by the Israeli occupational force. And let's be very, very clear that this is apartheid. And let's be very clear that the so-called justice-serving medias of the Western world, like the popular medias like the CNN, BBC, etc., are very, very hypocritical. They don't hesitate, they don't waste a single second to display their double standards when it comes to the loss of lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian innocent men, women and children. So with this I end. May the peace and blessings of the Creator be upon all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.